In the shadow of the Glorious Revolution, the 1690s dawned on a Britain forever changed. William III and Mary II sat uneasily on the throne, their rule a fragile bridge between absolute monarchy and parliamentary power. Jacobite loyalists to the exiled James II simmered in Ireland and Scotland, while across the Channel, Louis XIV of France plotted to restore his ally. This was no quiet interlude. It was a decade of blood-soaked battles, financial ingenuity, and the forging of a modern state. From the misty fields of Ireland to the choppy waters of the Atlantic, Britain grappled with enemies abroad and divisions at home, emerging not unscathed, but unbreakable. Picture the summer of 1690. The air in County Meath hung heavy with tension, as William III, the Dutch prince turned English king, led 36,000 troops against James II's forces at the River Boyne. Cannon smoke choked the sky, and the clash of pike and musket echoed like thunder. William, wounded but unyielding, routed the Jacobites in a battle that lasted mere hours. James fled in disgrace, his dreams of reclamation shattered. This victory was more than military. It cemented Protestant dominance in Ireland, where Catholic majorities chafed under English rule. Yet the cost was steep. Thousands dead, and the seeds of centuries-long resentment sown deep. The Irish campaign dragged into 1691, a grinding war of sieges and skirmishes. At Aughrim in July, William's general, Godard de Ginkle, crushed the last major Jacobite army in a slaughter that claimed 7,000 lives. Galway fell soon after, and by October, the Treaty of Limerick brought a bitter peace. Outlawed soldiers could go into exile or swear allegiance to William. But for most Irish Catholics, it meant the dawn of the penal laws, draconian measures stripping them of land, faith, and rights. From Britain's view, this pacified a restive Ireland, securing the western flank. But it bound Ireland tighter in chains, fueling a grudge that would simmer for generations. Northward in Scotland, echoes of rebellion reverberated. Jacobite Highlanders, led by the cunning Viscount Dundee, struck at Killiecrankie in 1689, their claymores flashing in a stunning upset against government troops. Yet Dundee's death turned the tide, and by 1690, William's forces had quashed the uprising. Then came the infamous Glencoe massacre in February 1692. 120 MacDonald clansmen, guests of the Campbell militia under government orders, were slaughtered in their beds for tardy oaths of loyalty. The betrayal horrified Scotland, eroding trust in William's regime and highlighting the brutal calculus of unification. These northern fires, though doused, left scars on the body politic. Across the Irish Sea, the true inferno raged in Europe. The 9 Years' War, ignited by Louis XIV's aggressions, pitted the Grand Alliance, England, the Dutch Republic, Austria, and Spain against French might. William, ever the strategist, poured English gold and steel into the fray, viewing it as a bulwark against Catholic absolutism. In May 1692, off the Normandy coast at La Hogue, an Anglo-Dutch fleet of 99 ships smashed 24 French vessels, their hulls splintering under broadsides. Cheers erupted on English decks as flames lit the night. This naval triumph shattered French invasion dreams and secured Britain's sea lanes, the lifeblood of its trade. But victory came at a price. French privateers swarmed the Atlantic, preying on merchant convoys like wolves on sheep. In 1693, the Smyrna fleet, laden with silks and spices worth a king's ransom, fell to French guns off Lagos, crippling English commerce. At home, bad harvests compounded the woe. The 1690s ill years brought famine to Scotland, where grain prices tripled and thousands starved in the glens. England fared little better. Inflation soared, coinage debased, and riots flared in London streets. William's endless wars drained the treasury, forcing Parliament to confront a radical truth. To fight like a great power, Britain needed a financial revolution. Enter 1694, a pivot year. With the Exchequer bear, Scottish financier William Paterson proposed a bold scheme, a joint stock bank to lend the Crown £1.2 million at 8% interest, secured by future taxes. On July 27th, King William granted the charter, birthing the Bank of England from Threadneedle Street's modest offices. No longer would monarchs default on debts like Charles II. This was public credit incarnate, a machine to fund armies without bankrupting the realm. Investors, from merchants to nobles, poured in, and the bank's notes became trusted currency. It transformed Britain from a spendthrift kingdom into a fiscal powerhouse, paving the way for empire. That December, tragedy struck the court. Queen Mary II, beloved for her piety and grace, succumbed to smallpox at Kensington Palace, leaving William to rule alone. Her death softened his image, but grief hardened his resolve. Parliament, emboldened by the Bill of Rights, pushed reforms. The Triennial Act of 1694 mandated elections every 3 years, curbing royal longevity in power. When the Licensing Act lapsed in 1695, the press exploded into life. Pamphlets and newspapers lambasted the king, birthing a raucous public sphere that would define Enlightenment debate. On the continent, fortunes turned. In 1695, William's siege of Namur, a fortress Louis had deemed impregnable, succeeded after 2 months of hellish assault. Miners tunneled beneath walls, gunpowder thundered, and 14,000 allies perished, but the citadel fell. Louis's aura cracked. His dream of European hegemony faltered. By September 1697, exhaustion forced the Treaty of Ryswick. France yielded, recognizing William as a rightful king and withdrawing support for James II. No lands changed hands, but Britain gained commercial concessions, easing tariffs and reopening trade routes. The war's toll, over 1 million lives and England's debt quadrupled, yielded intangible gold, naval supremacy, and a united front against French ambition. Peace brought introspection. In Scotland, the Darien scheme of 1698 epitomized bold folly. The Company of Scotland, starved of imperial scraps by English jealousy, dispatched 5,000 settlers to a swampy isthmus in Panama, dreaming of a trade shortcut to Asia. Disease, Spanish raids, and English sabotage doomed it. 2,000 died, bankrupting the nation. This catastrophe, costing a quarter of Scotland's wealth, accelerated calls for union with England, a merger that would reshape the islands a decade hence. Domestically, Parliament flexed its muscles. The Civil List Act of 1697 secured William a fixed income, trading royal independence for fiscal stability. In 1699, the Disbanding Act slashed the standing army to 7,000, a wig jab at William's continental obsessions. Across the Atlantic, King William's war mirrored the European struggle, with colonial militias clashing against French and native allies from Hudson Bay to the Carolinas. British victories at Quebec and Newfoundland bolstered imperial claims, but the real prize was the framework for future dominance. As 1700 closed, shadows lengthened. The death of William's heir, the young Duke of Gloucester, from smallpox, left the succession precarious. Parliament's Act of Resettlement loomed, eyeing Protestant Hanoverians over Catholic Stuarts. Bans on Indian calicos protected Lancashire looms, signalling mercantilism's grip. Britain stood at a crossroads, war-weary yet wealthier, divided yet defiant. The 1690s had tested the Glorious Revolution's promise, proving that liberty, when wed to innovation, could defy tyrants and tempests alike. This decade etched Britain's soul. From Boyne's Banks to Ryswick's Ink, it birthed a financial colossus, tamed rebellious fringes, and staked a claim as Europe's guardian. The costs, famine's hollow cheeks, battlefield's grim toll, forged resilience. As William gazed from Hampton Court, he saw not just survival, but the stirrings of empire. The 1690s were Britain's crucible, tempering a nation for the storms ahead,